Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post with me, Ghadi Francis. This is our weekly show where we bring you all the latest updates from the world's most volatile region. Joe Biden is rushing to end America's post-9/11 wars. First it was Afghanistan and now it is Iraq. The US president has announced the end of all combat missions in Iraq during a meeting with Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi in the White House. Now this agreement comes at a politically delicate time for the Iraqi government and could be a major boost for Baghdad right ahead of the elections.
If there was one day George Bush would want to rewrite, it is May 1st, 2003. A sunny day off the coast of San Diego, President Bush had just landed on USS Abraham Lincoln, changed out of his combat suit, and walked up to the podium. This was George Bush's Top Gun moment. He called Operation Iraqi Freedom a job well done. Behind the US president was an infamous banner that announced "Mission Accomplished." The speech was a notoriously premature boast. The quagmire was only just developing when Bush gave this ill-starred message.
Because the regime is no more.
18 years later, it has become a symbol of the Iraq War. A US-led coalition invaded Iraq in March 2003, ostensibly to find weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein was ousted from power, but the weapons were never found. Nearly 2 decades since the US-led invasion of Iraq, America has about 2,500 troops left here. This is a tiny fraction of the 160,000-strong force that occupied Iraq during the invasion. But Biden is determined to end America's post-9/11 wars. He is heralding a new era of foreign policy, but also treading a very fine line in the region. The president wants to get out of West Asia, but he is not trying to claim mission accomplished. US President Joe Biden and Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi have sealed an agreement in the White House. Biden is ending US combat missions in Iraq by the end of 2021, but US forces will still operate there in an advisory role.
Our role in Iraq will be as a dealing with it's just to be available, to continue to train, to assist, to help, and to deal with ISIS as it arrives. But we are not going to be, by the end of the year, in a combat mission.
The US military's presence in Iraq has always been a controversial one. Iran-backed politicians and groups want them out, but they aren't the only ones saying this. Even the ordinary Iraqi citizens are tired of foreign occupation. The move is a win-win for Mustafa al-Kadhimi. The Prime Minister is facing increasing pressure from Iran-backed groups, and the agreement could mean a boost for Baghdad, especially with elections looming over the country.
Today our relation is stronger than ever. Our partnership exists for economy, the environment, health, education, culture, and more. I'm looking forward to work with you, Mr. President, to bring our two countries more closer for benefit of Iraq and the United States. God bless our two countries. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
America's withdrawal from West Asia is all but inevitable. The US is shifting its focus to the Indo-Pacific. But what will this decision mean for the Islamic State? The last time the US tried to withdraw its troops was in 2011. It was a perfect opportunity for the Islamic State to seize Mosul. But this time, it is very unlikely. The Islamic State has been reduced to a fraction of its past. Its focus has shifted to ungoverned territories, and it's not likely to take on the Iraqi forces. Iraqis too believe their army can ensure stability. The shift is not expected to have a major operational impact.
What we are concerned with is the schedule of the withdrawal of US forces and, let us say, giving all powers to the Iraqi army for ground and air control. The Iraqi army is capable of defeating all those who dare to destabilize the country.
But the big winner here could be neighboring Iran. For the longest time, Iraq was the theater of conflict between Tehran and Washington. It was a tug of war here for supremacy in the region. Now, Iran may have a winning hand here, Iran is the preeminent Shiite Muslim power in West Asia. Its leverage over Iraq is a crucial source of its influence. Iran has long rallied to evict US from its neighborhood. And with the killing of Qasem Soleimani, the calls grew louder. Tehran wants to be the premier power in the region, and controlling Iraq's politics is crucial for this goal. The details of the agreement are yet to be revealed. Will this be the complete end of US occupation, or just a changed definition on paper? For now, America's mission in Iraq will downshift in relative quiet. They will take on an advisory role. But it won't mean an end to American presence. It's more like turning to a new chapter in Iraq. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
Like always, we'll continue to bring you all the latest updates from the heart of the conflict. Don't go anywhere, we have a lot more lined up for today. But first, as usual, let's take a look at what else is making the headlines across West Asia.
Authorities in Turkey are battling multiple blazes amid suspicions of arson. Dozens of villages as well as some hotels were evacuated as desperate residents battle flames to save their homes. At least 3 people have been killed in the blazes in the last few days. Raging wildfires have burned large swathes of Lebanon's pine forests in the north, killing at least 1 firefighter and forcing some residents to flee. The fire brigade and army moved to control the fires fueled by strong winds in the Akkar region. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that the negotiating process with Iran to revive a 2015 nuclear deal could not go on indefinitely. Blinken said that the ball is in Tehran's court as indirect talks between the US and Washington remained adjourned. Saudi Arabia will impose a 3-year travel ban on citizens traveling to countries on its red list. This is a part of the kingdom's efforts to curb the spread of coronavirus. Saudi Arabia has banned travel to or transit through at a number of countries, with cases being fueled by the new Delta variant. In Iran's Khuzestan province, people have been taking to the streets as water in taps run dry amid soaring heat. Security forces have dealt with these protesters with a heavy hand. While Khamenei said the people had the right to protest, he warned protesters not to give ammunition to Iran's enemies.
Lebanon has turned to billionaire tycoon Najib Mikati to form a new government as the country continues to face its worst economic and political crisis in decades. Now Mikati is the 3rd PM designate to be named after the government of Hassan Diab resigned in the wake of last year's Beirut port blast. But will the tycoon be able to form a government and steer Lebanon out of its worst crisis since the civil war? Lebanon has a new PM designate. Heard that before? In the last 1 year, this headline has become common sight. 3 PM designates were chosen in the last 12 months, but none of them have formed a new government yet. Lebanon's new chosen one is Najib Mikati, a billionaire tycoon and a former prime minister. Many in the country knew this was coming. But amid the crisis, they really did not care.
As long as this ruling class is still in power, nothing will change. No way. No matter who comes with this political class, we're on our own. Our past is gone. Our present was destroyed in the August 4 blast. And our future? Where is our children's future? We don't have a future for our children.
Lebanon is going through its worst economic and political crisis that the country has witnessed since the civil war. The dollar has plunged, fuel and medicines are running out, and prices of basic necessities are soaring to a record high. After Saad Hariri threw in the towel, lawmakers scrambled fast to find a replacement. Najib Mikati ended up clinching over 72 endorsements, including that of the Hezbollah.
In reality, I want your trust. I want the people's trust. I want the trust of every man and woman, of every youth. I don't have a magic wand, and alone I can't make miracles happen. We are in a very difficult situation, and you all know that.
The 65-year-old is now calling for trust as he tries to form a new government. If he manages, he then faces a daunting task: steering Lebanon out of its worst crises. But for the people of the West Asian nation, he is a symbol of the same ruling class that has driven the country to ruins. Mikati is considered to be Lebanon's richest man, one of the wealthiest in West Asia, with a net worth of $2.7 billion. He first entered Lebanese politics in 1998, when he was appointed Minister for Transport and Public Works, a post he held until 2004 under 3 consecutive cabinets. Mikati emerged as Prime Minister in 2005, when he headed a 3-month interim government. In 2011, he came back at the helm of a government dominated by the Hezbollah. Many even called him a puppet of the group. But his rise to power isn't without scandals. The Sunni Muslim politician was accused by a state prosecutor of illicit enrichment in 2019, a charge that he denies till date. In Tripoli, where he hails from, protesters have accused him of corruption and cronyism. For now, Mikati will pick up where his predecessor left off, a bid to form government under immense international pressure. He is already holding consultations with political parties, as skepticism clouds the chance to end the institutional vacuum. Next week, Lebanon will mark 1 year of the Beirut blast, a year of intense political deadlock. But a new government could take months to form. Months that crisis-hit Lebanon cannot afford. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One. The Abraham Accords were the sign of a new era in West Asia. But Israel has now halted an Emirati oil pipeline deal over environmental concerns. The oil transport deal is being widely opposed by Israeli environmentalists and was seen as a threat to the coral reefs of the Gulf of Eilat. But what will this mean for the UAE-Israeli relations, which were only normalized last year?
This is the Red Sea, a unique water body hosting some of the most diverse coral reefs in the world. But these world-renowned coral reefs are now in danger. The reefs are just 200 meters away from where oil from the Gulf will be unloaded. In focus is a UAE-Israeli oil pipeline deal, a part of the enthusiastic response to the two countries establishing diplomatic ties as part of the historic Abraham Accords. The agreement was to bring the Emirati crude oil by tanker to a pipeline in the Israeli port of Eilat. It would then be transported to the Mediterranean city of Ashkelon. But this ambitious project is now on hold. Israel believes that the pipeline is a threat to the coral reefs. The Environmental Protection Ministry has rejected an environmental risk survey that assessed the deal along with its risk factors. The worry is that an oil leak would cause immeasurable damage. Israel's new permanent ambassador to the UAE tweeted his opposition to the deal, saying it poses both a security and ecological danger. But reports suggest that the Emirates is worried about the pause. Huge sums of money have already been poured into the deal, and this could have an impact on new business agreements. While coral populations are under threat from bleaching caused by climate change, the reefs in Eilat have remained stable due to their unique heat resistance. Eilat's Coral Beach Reserve extends up to 1.2 kilometers off the city's coast, often protecting reefs that are home to a rich variety of marine life. But their proximity to the Israel state-owned EAPC port puts them at grave risk. The infrastructure is not set up to prevent accidents, and pollution can be treated once it is in the water only. Opposition to this deal is not new. Protesters have called it a disaster waiting to happen.
Malfunctions happen, and the result will be a constant leak of oil pollution right here, just next to the reef. Where you see those people, that's where the reef begins. So right next to it, the water will be polluted.
A historic peace agreement, palpable excitement among the people, and business deals across multiple sectors. The Abraham Accords marked a new era of Israel-UAE relations. But Israel has now hit the pause button on a major deal. The question now is, will it impact the newly formed relations? It is only something that time will tell. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
For the last 6 years, Yemen has been a battleground. But away from the front lines, Yemen is waging another battle. Its opposing central banks are fighting as inflation soars in the country. But what will this mean for a population that is already going through the worst humanitarian crisis in the world?
Each time someone walks into this grocery store, everyday items seem more and more expensive. Even the price of a staple loaf of bread has soared 50% in a month. The result of Yemen's 6-year-long war.
A loaf of fruity bread was for 5 riyals. Now it has reached 30 riyals. And it's very small, the size of a pen. It can't even feed a child now. The high prices are obscene.
The fighting here may have reached a bloody stalemate. But away from the front line, another battle is raging. A tiff between the rival central banks has splintered the currency, sending prices soaring in the war-torn nation. Spiraling inflation has compounded the misery in a country where most of its 29 million population rely on aid to stay alive. Yemen's economy was fragile even before the war was erupted in 2014. But it is now facing an acute economic crisis. Yemen is split between an internationally recognized government in the south and the Iran-aligned Houthi movement that controls most of the north. Each side has a central bank with opposing policies. The Aden Central Bank has access to international financial markets. It has increasingly turned to printing new currency notes to cover the government's deficit and pay public sector wages. That has inevitably sparked criticism in the north, where only the increasingly tattered old real notes are accepted. The result is that even Yemen's exchange rate is split. The rate for the new notes in Aden hit 1,000 riyals to the dollar. In Houthi-held Sana'a, the rate was about 600.
In fact, what is happening is a systematic destruction of the Yemeni riyal. The value of signed contracts by the so-called Central Bank of Aden with printing companies abroad is 5 trillion and 320 billion Yemeni riyals. We can fairly say that this sum, which was printed over the past 6 years, is 3 times what Sana'a Central Bank printed in 60 years, since 1964 until 2014.
Since 2018, the IMF and the United Nations have tried to reunite both the central banks in Yemen. This was a part of the wider stalled efforts to end the war. But there has been no success so far. The government also doubled the US dollar exchange rate. This was used to calculate customs duties on non-essential goods. A desperate bid to shore up public finances in a nation which imports a huge bulk of its goods. The Saudi-backed government accuses the Houthis of diverting revenues. The Houthi, on the other hand, want the coalition to lift the blockade. And caught in between are thousands of Yemenis struggling to survive amid a soaring inflation. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
Jordan is no stranger to UNESCO's World Heritage Sites. There are the likes of Petra, Wadi Rum, Qusayr Amra. But the latest addition is a unique one. The city of As-Salt is located northwestern Amman. The sandstone city is a must-visit for all tourists visiting the kingdom. We tell you why.
Archways and lintels of exquisite detail, faded columns, decorative facades, and yellow sandstone edifices are a common sight here, walking down the streets in Jordan's As-Salt. One feature stands out above all others. Most of the buildings are made of sandstone, giving it a unique yellow appearance. As-Salt was the first capital of the Hashemite kingdom in the early 20th century, but its founding dates back to 300 BC. It is a town in the Balka Governorate, located 35 kilometers to the northwest of Amman. But what distinguishes it is its very singular architecture, a result of industrialization, especially during the Ottoman era. It saw Syrian, Turkish and Palestinian craftsmen flocking in the city, looking for work in the architectural hub. Their skills and ideas mingled, taking form in the city's buildings. The edifices are an eclectic language, unique to As-Salt. Made of yellow sandstone from local hillsides.
The city of As-Salt is distinguished by heritage buildings, and there are 657 heritage buildings still present in the city of As-Salt. These are built of yellow stone in the neighborhoods and corridors to preserve heritage, to preserve culture, to preserve customs and traditions. In short, it is the living heritage of all components of the city, most of which are still present and visible inside the city.
The city's history is also one of religious tolerance. Its population is roughly a third Christian and 2/3 Muslim, but it is symbolized by the Church of St. George, a saint revered by both Christians and Muslims. As-Salt is a hub of peaceful coexistence in Jordan, an example of unparalleled socio-cultural development. Many people here continue to earn a living the same way as their grandparents, preserving local traditions and produce like the Al-Atarin.
People still preserve their customs, traditions and commercial professions. For example, Al-Hammam Street, about 150 years old. Most shops still practice the same professions that existed for a long time, such as Al-Atarin, medicinal herbs. They still inherit the profession from their parents and grandparents.
As-Salt's addition to the UNESCO World Heritage List is a reason for celebration for its citizens. Many buildings are yet to be restored, waiting for renewed interest and investment. It will also bring in tourists to this idyllic hub. The kingdom already has a number of sites on the UNESCO list, the likes of Petra, Wadi Rum and Qusayr Amra. But visiting As-Salt is like stepping back in history, an experience that is a must for any tourist in Jordan. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay home and stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis and you're watching WION World is One.